Yesterday, BlackRock came out with a statement and said, we are seeing Bitcoin emerge as a global monetary alternative, right? Like that's very significant. The page has turned. They've gone from getting the ETFs approved and making it an investable asset to now making a statement that it is a global monetary alternative, not a global currency alternative, a global monetary alternative. Money is something that lasts forever, right? Good money is like gravity. Its qualities are preserved forever.
Today, I'm pleased to welcome Lisa Hough to the podcast. Lisa is a strategic advisor to energy companies, bridging the gap with the Bitcoin community, understanding that these partnerships are critical to national security. Lisa is a former natural gas trader and on the board of many companies. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Lisa.
Thank you, Paula. Nice to be here. I'm sorry I missed you last week.
That's okay. I'm looking forward to hearing your story, but before we get there, tell me a little bit about your background.
You summed it up really nicely. Started my career working for Solomon Brothers on their commodity trading desk. The group was called Fibro Energy. So if anybody is out there who has age and wisdom like I do, you might recognize the name. Grew up in Houston, spent a lot of time in and around the energy companies, and I don't know, just sort of naturally fell into helping energy companies understand not only what is Bitcoin mining, but how it can be financially of benefit to them and also operationally of benefit to them. And those are great conversations. They're really fun to have. When we finish today, I'm headed to meet with a private equity group who's brought in one of the companies that they work with, and we're going to comb through a portfolio of midstream assets and look for potential for them to, integrate Bitcoin mining. And this particular group is three youngish founders who have been wildly successful in the energy space. So I have a fun job. It's what I do most days, and it's lights me up. Even when I wake up at 4:30 because I haven't slept well, I'm like dying to get up and get going. So it's a treat to kind of be here with you for a few minutes. So thank you.
It's amazing to work in something that you're passionate about.
Definitely.
That's how you found Bitcoin and became so passionate about it.
Well, I was super greedy, right? I was looking at making some portfolio changes and had an argument with my financial advisor, the type like 70-year-old white guy who was really convincing me that he had been doing this for 35 years and he knew the way and he's achieved whatever returns for his clients, whatever, fine, great. Like, I'm glad it worked for you. I'm glad it worked for them. I particularly didn't want to be in a bunch of mutual funds that were holding REITs and renewable energy and, DEI, virtue signaling type entities. And this was really around the time that there were a lot of bad press about the energy companies. I think Exxon, there was some massive pressure on Exxon on who their board members were. And, the greenwashing was in full force. And truthfully, my financial advisor fired me and told me to close all my accounts and go somewhere else. And so I did. And when I started looking at what I wanted to invest in, aside from a very heavy energy portfolio, I started looking at new technology, and the word that kept coming up was blockchain. And I was convinced that if I bought blockchain, I'd be wildly rich. So I, went to the trusted source of Google and said, "Hey, Google, how do I buy blockchain?" And that started me down the sort of crypto convoluted path to Bitcoin. And, it was kind of funny looking back because I did start in this space by trading crypto. And I felt like it was just a very normal thing. Like I feel like in kind of maybe in my generation, maybe the younger generation, like we all look at our Robinhood, Schwab, TD Ameritrade, whatever your brokerage is, right? Like we all have these apps and we're all just endlessly addicted to what Apple did today or what Nvidia did today or now what are these cryptos doing? And I was on a trip. I was in a mountain town in Mexico, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and one of the cryptos had a huge move. And truthfully, I don't remember if it was up or down, but I just remember it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I'm like glued to my phone. And why did this move? And I had, a position on, which is really why I cared. And I came home from that trip and I went, you know what? I don't want to do this. Like, I legitimately was paid to trade commodities. I don't want to be a crypto trader. In fact, I don't want to look at earnings calls. I don't want to look at Apple as a standard, or, I don't want to investigate what each of these companies are doing so that I can predict whether or not I live under a bridge when I'm retired or not, right? Like, that's the goal of investing or saving, is so that, we can all live long and happy lives rather than short and stressful ones. So, for me, it just meant, I think I'm just going to buy Bitcoin. I think I'm just going to hold that. And I did hold, a pretty big percentage relative to the S&P percentage. I think the energy overall at the time was maybe 2% or 3% of the S&P, and I probably had 30% of my portfolio in energy companies. And I really was listening to the energy company investor calls, and I still do. I think they're fascinating. And I think that they're hugely connected to the Bitcoin mining space, which we can get into when I quit rambling here. But anyway, that's sort of how I found Bitcoin.
So what you're saying is Bitcoin just keeps your life more simple and less stressful. So that's really the only investment you need.
Not financial advice, but it's made my life very simple.
And is there also more to that, in that you also saw that Bitcoin had qualities that those other cryptos don't have?
Well, not financial advice, but I fundamentally believe that all of the other cryptos are going to zero. And I had a call with somebody yesterday who was trying to pitch me on, maybe I won't say the crypto, but this specific crypto. And, well, but the US government's going to use it. It's going to be the underpinning of the government, whatever. And I tend to believe this PhD idiot that has convinced this otherwise very bright young person, not my daughter, by the way, but about this crypto's potential, and has really linked it to the US government. And, this guy said to me, I'd really love to hear your take. And I said, my take is that, I'm sorry, but my take is that shit's going to zero. All that shit's going to zero because it's worthless. And by the way, like, how many entities outside of the US government hold any of our nuclear information? So keys, codes, specifics of locations, technical specifications. The answer is zero. And the chance that the US government is going to partner with this guy, no matter how many PhDs he has from all of these woke universities, is absolutely faulty logic. Like, I'm sorry, that dog won't hunt.
So, just on that note, do you also see that Bitcoin will become a medium of exchange in order to survive?
Well, Bitcoin already is a medium of exchange, right? I mean, we're living our best lives in a country where magic happens every day, right? We have, see that light switch? Like, I call that the magic fairy switch. Like, we all wake up and we hit that switch and we hit the button on our magic espresso machines, and things happen for us. Like, the rest of the world doesn't live that way. And the rest of the world also doesn't have a functioning currency. Most currencies are pegged to the dollar, but there are a lot that actually are completely decoupled from the dollar and, lose value, lose tremendous value for their citizens. And, much in the way I don't want to hold another nation's currency. I don't want to store my short-term value in the naira or the peso. Those people also don't wish to store their value in those things, right? The people that live within those countries don't wish to store their value. And in many countries, it's actually illegal for them to hold US dollars, or it's illegal for them to hold over a certain amount of US dollars, whether that be $20, $100, a couple of $1,000. You can't in any country basically store all of your wealth in dollars, not that you'd want to, right? It'd be better than the currency in Egypt or Turkey, but currency and money are not the same. And that is a fundamental blip that we have. That's a fundamental gap in our knowledge. In my opinion, I feel that in the US especially, we do not understand that those are two different things. Cigarettes can be currency, right? Depending on your circumstance, you could use any number of things for currency. AA batteries, 9mm ammo, M&Ms. Maybe it's bottled water in a hurricane situation. Like any of those things can be considered currency, but they're not, you wouldn't store your wealth in those for the long term. Elon Musk does not store 1% or more of his wealth in dollars. Dollars are a token. They are a mechanism for exchange. They are not a mechanism for saving. And so the world is now seeing that we have a monetary technology where they can save their wealth. And actually, yesterday, BlackRock came out with a statement and said, we are seeing Bitcoin emerge as a global monetary alternative, right? Like that's very significant. The page has turned. They've gone from getting the ETFs approved and making it an investable asset to now making a statement that it is a global monetary alternative, not a global currency alternative, a global monetary alternative. Money is something that lasts forever, right? A money that lasts forever. Good money is like gravity. Its qualities are preserved forever.
Yeah, that's quite incredible for BlackRock to say that.
Hugely incredible.
So, on to energy. How is energy at the root of national security?
See that magic switch over there?
I see it.
Right. Okay. So national security, in my view, is really three things. So it's a thriving economy. It's the Coca-Cola bottler that's around the corner from my house. It's the grocery stores. It's the technology companies, right? It's the innovators. It's the entrepreneurs. That is what lead to a thriving economy. In order to have a thriving economy, you need freedom of speech, freedom of thought, and you need the ability to innovate. Okay, so that's pillar number one for national security, because there's no poor country that has strong national security. Item number two is diplomacy. And our energy diplomacy has been front and center of our relationships with our allies forever. And we know that when we are not in good stead with others who have strong natural resource positions like Saudi, it rains down in a very negative way on the US. So we need strong foreign relations, especially with energy rich countries. And I would really like to touch on, I'll finish this kind of three pillars of national security, but then I'd really like to touch on kind of trade routes, the idea of trade routes. So remind me if I forget, because after I ramble, sometimes I forget where I'm going. But the most obvious pillar of national security is your military, right? Without a strong military, you don't have the ability to protect, essentially, maybe this is the good segue, potentially to protect your trade routes, right? That's what militaries are for, to protect our ability to get the things that we want and to sell the things that we make, right? And to protect our borders. So the way that I view going forward, the trade route of the future, this is a gigantic leap, so we're just going to go there. Trade routes of the future is hash rate. So our alliances with countries with strong hash rate will be critical going forward, because Bitcoin will be the underpinning of all information transfer, certainly value transfer, right? That's its first use case, but it's a ledger. No one can screw it up. No one can change it. No one can decide what gets processed or not. The distribution of the people participating in the network ensure that the people participating in the network can keep it functionally sound. So hash rate is the future of our trade routes. We must have domestic hash rate, and we must have good foreign relations with those who have hash rates in their countries.
So,
Sorry, I know that's a lot.
no, yeah. So let's link energy companies to Bitcoin and hash rate. How does that all go together?
Yeah, we have seen in the US, huge mining sites that are being built, and they've all been built on grid. We've seen development in the renewable space. Miners are now working with renewables. We've seen attempt to work with nuclear facilities for mining. But if we all plug our hash rate into the grid, if that's where we get the power in order to run our hash rate, and something happens to our grid, if one of the folks that we're not super friendly with decides to attack our grids, our hash rate would go down. And so the conversations that I'm having are with people that own energy infrastructure or energy production. I'm helping them understand why, it just makes them money for them to start mining, right? I always start with I was greedy. Let me assume that they would like also to make money, right? No one wants to do something and lose money. So I'll present the economic case. It's pretty easy to present the operational benefits. If you are a producer in Texas or New Mexico and you have crude oil and then natural gas that comes with it, and if the EPA comes in and says you can't flare anymore, right? And perhaps you have a pipeline to take your crude oil, but let's just say that there's not enough pipeline takeaway in the area where the well is, and that's the case in parts of that is the case across a lot of the development, especially out in New Mexico and West Texas. Like there are pipelines being constructed, but the minute that they're turned on, they're full. There's just more production than there is takeaway, and so the companies want to sell their oil. That's where they're making the most money. They want to get that to market. If they can't flare, they have in the past been left with I need to find something else to do with this gas. And maybe that means bringing in an operator to help process the gas, right? So maybe you're stripping natural gas liquids and you're able to sell the propane, you're able to sell other things, but you're still left with this methane. Okay, maybe then you bring in a CNG, a compressed natural gas guy who can further compress it and get it put into a truck that you can take away. But I mean, that's cumbersome and it's expensive. And it's also not a way to move huge volumes of gas. So, in one instance that I'm working on right now, I mean, the guys don't have anywhere to go with their methane, and therefore they can't produce their crude oil. So, enter Bitcoin mining. It's a pretty ingenious solution. And oh, by the way, every time I meet with an energy company, I tell them I think they're the heroes of our national security because they help all the magic happen in every facility across the country every day, right? They're a key part of making magic happen in manufacturing and schools. And so when you explain to them that Bitcoin mining is also deeply connected to our national security, it really rings the bell.
Yeah, I can see why you're the perfect person to connect energy companies and mining. If I was an energy company, I'd still like to know, how is mining Bitcoin going to help my company?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the instance that I just gave you, when you have a Bitcoin miner that you either partner with or you do it yourself, right? What that basically looks like. So on this well pad, we're delivering natural gas generators. The generators eat the methane, turn it into electricity to run the data centers that we're dropping there. So the data centers look like shipping containers and they're full of computers. So that actually gets their well operational. That's a huge benefit. And then if they want, they can sell that Bitcoin every day. I mean, theoretically, right? Like if they're mining, they can execute an order and sell all of their mining production every day. They'll direct their hash to a pool. Let's say that it goes to Ocean or Luxor or Foundry, right? They direct it to a pool. They're able to sell it on a daily basis and get paid on a daily basis. They don't need to wait 30 days, as would be the case when they deliver the crude oil or when they deliver, the CNG gets delivered. But beyond that, and this is not something also I don't believe is widely appreciated, is that you have a lot of option value when you are now able to produce more than one commodity or more than two commodities, right? If we view Bitcoin as a commodity and we spend millions or billions of dollars on energy infrastructure, right? We have all this storage for natural gas. We have salt dome caverns for natural gas where we fill it up and we hope that the price down the road is higher than the price today. That's sort of the point of storage, and also to manage if we have huge shifts in demand, or often in the winter we are dipping into storage. We are dipping into storage because our daily production doesn't meet our daily demand. So fine, but like, what if you stored the Bitcoin for when Bitcoin price was going higher? So there's option value in your ability to do that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I understand now. So, as a free market advocate, why is the ESG narrative dangerous?
Well, I mean, because it is a way to manipulate the market, right? I found it really interesting a couple of years ago when BlackRock had a gentleman, I can't think of his name, but it'd be easy to Google, who ran their ESG ETFs, and he resigned. And in his statement when he resigned, it was something along the lines of, this just was not good for shareholders. Like this was, not aligned with what he signed up to do. And it was virtue signaling. And in my opinion, companies, BlackRock, but companies have the obligation to their shareholders first and foremost to make money. I mean, I'd probably be delighted if all of your company folks volunteered at the food bank, right? That would make me feel warm and fuzzy. That actually doesn't make me want to be a shareholder. I want to be a shareholder of companies that make money because I'm giving them my money so that they can presumably use it, invest it, grow it more effectively than I can. I mean, that's the general consensus, right? That's why people invest, because they don't, as Michael Saylor sort of famously says, like, companies that return money to shareholders by way of dividends or share buybacks are companies that have said, I'm out of ideas, take your money back, right? Like, that's sort of the problem with the corporate America model, which is hugely broken. The idea of a free market is that great ideas win. Great ideas can thrive. Just like side note, do you want to take like a little side trip over to why Warren Buffett doesn't, in my opinion, why he doesn't like Bitcoin?
Sure.
Or Bitcoin mining, why they've been anti-Bitcoin mining? Probably for more reasons than this, but my favorite is that after Winter Storm Uri in Texas, we had all sorts of problems all across our energy infrastructure. We had pipes that were frozen, like at plants. We had not enough energy. We had just all sorts, like the frailties of ERCOT were in full show. And so Warren Buffett, rides down to Texas on his double wide horse and says, hey, I can fix this. Let me build 10 peaker plants. And for this guaranteed, 8 or 9 or 10% rate of return, I'll put forth the money to build these, and we'll build 10 peaker plants and they'll be 50 megawatts a piece. And so you'll never run out of energy because this will provide you with 500 megawatts to your grid, and it'll solve all your winter problems going forward. Okay. So first of all, in Texas, that's not how our power markets trade. They are freely traded markets. Not everywhere in the United States do they trade this way. A lot of power actually gets sold. The companies who make power get paid to basically have power available, and then they get paid on the power that they sell. Texas does not work that way. So Texas is a real-time market. Okay, but back to Warren Buffett. He says, for this 8 or 9 or 10% rate of return, I'll put this infrastructure in place. Oh, but I want Texas ratepayers to just contribute just this tiny little bit to these projects. So it'll be fine. It'll be good for Texas. Well, it was like $1 or $2 a month for me. It was $8 or $9 or $10 a month for the nail salon in the strip center down the street. And it was a couple of $100 for the Coca-Cola bottler that's on the highway a month forever, or, for the presumable future. And so it's like an insurance policy that I'm paying for so that Warren Buffett can have a guaranteed rate of return in his pocket when Texas has free market energy. Like, no, turn your double white horse around and go back to Omaha. So anyway, the correlation to Bitcoin mining is that the same 500 megawatts, right? That's what Riot has at their Rockdale facility. And maybe they have 700 megawatts in Corsicana. I'm not quite sure. But the point is, those Bitcoin miners can just as easily turn off when Warren Buffett was pitching, he'd turn on. And oh, by the way, Riot is not charging me $1 or $9 or $200 a month in order to agree to turn off, right? All of that was construed and constructed in the capital markets. Riot shareholders, Riot investors, everybody in that debt stack, they made that decision. I didn't have to bear the cost of that. So I am a free market advocate because free markets solve problems. Riot's solving the same problem that Warren Buffett proposed to solve. And there's no burden on a taxpayer.
Can we be environmentally conscious at the same time?
Are you speaking directly about Bitcoin?
Just about ESG. That's what everybody thinks, that, the environment's going to be so affected.
I would just put forth a notion that everyone wants to breathe clean air. Everyone wants to drink clean water. People are good fundamentally. We make decisions around our energy consumption so that our country can thrive. No one wants to drill an oil well and then pollute waters or air. That is never the goal. And so when we have these ESG folks start attacking Bitcoin or start attacking our use of energy, it's like, okay, let's dial this back. Let's go back 50 years. Let's go back 100 years. Should we all go back to burning wood as our main fuel source, or whale oil, or, actually, okay, fundamental. Here's an interesting tidbit that I just read a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to dig into this because I found this fascinating. Every time we transition from a major thermal source, so we go from one sort of energy to a more dense energy, there's always this thought that, oh, this will be better, cleaner, superior. The ability to do more with less, it will improve our ability to grow our economy, etc. It will improve the way that we live. In an energy, well, I'm going to address two things, but when we've made those changes from wood to oil, we actually then began using more wood than before the oil came into play, because all of the barrels that the oil was stored in when Rockefeller started working his magic, all of that was stored in wood barrels, and he actually owned the barrel manufacturer. And so energy is about layering on new technology. It has never been about eliminating a technology. And actually, fun fact, feel free to fact check me and correct me, send me an email or at me on X if I'm wrong. But there was a gentleman who was a nuclear scientist, I think in the early 50s. The first time the word energy transition was really ever used in public was by this guy. And energy transition was defined as what happens to the nucleus of an atom as it changes. So I would say that most people that talk about the energy transition or ESG or a carbon-free future have no clue as to the energy, the history of energy, how energy production works. Like, this is what I said to a young person recently. Just give me 3 steps in a row of any part of energy production, of it coming out of the ground to it making it to your house. Give me just 3 steps in a row somewhere along the chain. No one ever can. I mean, not no one. The climate zealots that are on college campuses never can because they don't know how energy works. They don't know how markets work. Largely, they don't know anything about technology. Like, I'm happy to have an ESG conversation if we can actually have people who are thinkers and want to have a productive conversation about what are we actually trying to do? Are we trying to make our world, the United States, a stronger place so that people can thrive and grow and be healthy and rich, hopefully? Or are we trying to go back to the dark ages like Europe? I mean, their people are poor. They're shutting down their energy sources. Like, I'm sorry, what? It's astonishing that the risk of our energy security is not more of a conversation at those ESG meetings, at those climate zealot meetings. I mean, I really feel as though that entire rhetoric and narrative is dangerous to our national security, and it's just maybe above all of that and more irritating, it's just distracting. It's like you're not putting any good into the universe when you're spewing all of that. And history will not be on your side.
We need you at those meetings, Lisa.
Thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I talk about it as often as I'm asked.
But I think it's one area that a lot of even Bitcoiners don't understand. It's been the last area for me to look into. So I do really appreciate you explaining.
Well, you're welcome. But how would you understand, right? Like, I didn't understand how money worked before I dove into Bitcoin. There are a lot of things I didn't understand before I got into Bitcoin. I happen to come from the energy space, and so I do have a little bit of a background there. But to me, Bitcoin is, I mean, another part of it that people don't talk about is Bitcoin is language, right? Bitcoin is the first language that the whole world can speak. It's the first way we have an even communication system. No Google Translate required. No foreign exchange required. Language is a way for us to express preferences. Money is the tool by which we express preferences. We don't talk about that very much. And that's not a subject, I'm not a subject matter expert on that, but I find it hugely interesting. We don't talk about Bitcoin in a biblical sense, hardly at all, because no one wants to talk about God. I find that hugely interesting.
For you, has Bitcoin been spiritual?
I'm a very spiritual person anyway, but I do think that this is a very unique gift to humanity. And, I do believe that all gifts are divine. I think gifts are all around us. I also know just for myself that the more I have settled into my faith and really dug into Bitcoin and dug into kind of longevity and happiness and health, because I want to be my grandparents lived to be in their mid to late 90s and they were super healthy. Like, I want to be that. They lived at home, still gardening, still cutting their grass at 95 years old. Like, yes, please sign me up. But if you live in a world where you're consumed with your brokerage account app on your cell phone, and really that's from a place of fear, that's from a place that you need to be watching something all of the time. Otherwise, there will be negative impact in the future. When we burden ourselves with all of that fear and stress, that is not that is not extending our path forward. That is path destruction. That is life destruction.
Yeah. I love your positive outlook, and it's so important in life. How else has Bitcoin changed you?
Well, these crazy people on Twitter have now got me pretty much on a carnivore diet, which I really like. I mean, I enjoy our community so much. I feel like Bitcoin is the ultimate value alignment tool. And if you are a Bitcoiner, I really probably know where you stand on family and your health. And like, we all want to live to be 100 and healthy and hiking and all of those things. I feel so grateful to have found this community. And I really have a hard time now with, kind of fitting. I feel like such an outcast now in my other friend groups because they're not on the Bitcoin train and I don't preach at them or any of that. But I listen to what they talk about and what their concerns are. And I just think, it's a lot to carry around. So Bitcoin really just lets you set a lot of stuff down and really focus on what's important.
Are your family and some of your friends on the Bitcoin train? And do you try to orange pill them or do you just watch?
I do. Absolutely. I do, but I don't push. And I can tell if someone's going to be receptive or not. And if they're not, that's okay. And I don't say I told you so. People generally don't make a change until they're in pain. And that's just fact, regardless of what the pain might be. We don't change until pain is here, right? Like we don't clean up what we eat until we get cancer. We don't start exercising until we have a heart attack. So people are on their journey of pain somewhere, and I hope that they will find Bitcoin.
Yeah, me too. Just briefly, how do you think the Trump administration will help the Bitcoin narrative going forward?
Well, I just think it helps. I think it helps us live in a nation to be proud of. I think it helps us get back to what America was built on. Free speech, innovation, let's be skinny, right? Not skinny people, but like let's be skinny in our organizations. Let's be lean, let's be efficient. And Senator Lummis's strategic Bitcoin reserve, I think, is a very timely and pivotal moment in our nation's history. And I think I saw yesterday it's the third most read bill like on the government websites, which is pretty great.
Do you think there's a good chance she gets it through?
Absolutely.
That'll be amazing. Go
But
USA.
if she doesn't, I mean, if we don't as a country, okay, I guess it's sort of like carrying on. But you and I own Bitcoin. Hopefully, some of the folks listening own Bitcoin. I think we will, though. Donald Trump says he owns Bitcoin. We know that JD Vance owns Bitcoin. We know that RFK. I saw RFK the other day say he has most of his wealth in Bitcoin. I just have to think that, again, when you have value alignment around sound money, it allows us to really align, a very bright future.
Well, that's a wonderful place to end on a bright future. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lisa. Tell us where people can find you.
Thank you, Paula. I have a website. It's lisahuff.io. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. You can send me a DM. I think my DMs are open, but if not, you can book time on my website. I think there's some like 20-minute slots. And I love those. I love it when people reach out and book time because it's a huge privilege to hear what people are working on or how they're thinking about coming into Bitcoin. I talk to a lot of students and that's been fun over the years because one of the students that I spoke to is now working at MicroStrategy and it is so fun to me. And, I'm a mom, so like, it is so fun to see people win. There's just no greater joy.
Thank you.
Thank you.